Chapter 16. The Socially Friendly. Let my feeble pen, too, join in praise of this tribe. They have been hailed as pirates, as freebooters, as tramps, as escaped convicts. They have been lauded as noble brigands, from Robin Hood on down to operetta heroes. And we have been assured that they have sensitive hearts, that they plunder the rich and share with the poor. And indeed, has not all the world literature glorified the thieves? It is not for us to reproach Francois Villon, but neither Hugo nor Balzac could avoid that path. And Pushkin, too, praised the thief principle in his gypsies. And what about Byron? But never have they been so widely glorified and with such unanimity and so consistently as in Soviet literature. Who was there who was not breathless with sacred emotion in describing the thieves to us, their vivid unreined nihilism at the beginning, and their dialectical reforging at the end, starting with Mayakovsky, and, in his footsteps, Shostakovich with his ballet, The Young Lady and the Hooligan, and including Lenov, Savinsky, Inber, and you can go on and on. In old Russia there existed, just as there still exists in the West, an incorrect view of thieves as incorrigible, permanent criminals, a nucleus of criminality. Because of this, the politicals were segregated from them on prisoner transports and in prisons. In old Russia there was just one single formula to be applied to the criminal recidivists. Make them bow their heads beneath the iron yoke of the law. And so it was up to 1914 that thieves did not play the boss either in Russia as a whole or in Russian prisons. But the shackles fell and freedom dawned. In the desertion of millions of 1917, and then in the Civil War, all human passions were largely unleashed, and those of the thieves most of all, and they no longer wished to bow their heads beneath the yoke. Moreover, they were informed that they didn't have to. It was found both useful and amusing that they were enemies of private property, and therefore a counter-revolutionary force which had to be guided into the mainstream of proletariat. Yes, and this would constitute no special difficulty. Reasoning on a social basis, wasn't the environment to blame for everything? So let us re-educate these healthy lumpen proletarians and introduce them into the system of conscious life. And now, when more than 40 years have gone by, one can look around and begin to have doubts. Who re-educated whom? Did the Chekists re-educate the thieves, or the thieves the Chekists? The Urka, the habitual thief, who adopted the Chekist faith, became a bitch, and his fellow thieves would cut his throat. The Chekist who acquired the psychology of the thief was an energetic interrogator of the 30s and 40s, or else a resolute camp chief. Such men were appreciated. They got the service promotions. And the psychology of the Urki was exceedingly simple and very easy to acquire. 1. I want to live and enjoy myself, and fuck the rest. 2. Whoever is the strongest is right. 3. If they aren't beating you, then don't lie down and ask for it. In other words, as long as they're beating up someone else, don't stick up for the ones being beaten. Wait your own turn. Beat up your submissive enemies one at a time. Somehow this is a very familiar law. It is what Hitler did. It is what Stalin did. Come on now, stop lying, you mercenary pens. You who have observed the Russian thieves through a steamship rail or across an interrogator's desk. You who have never encountered the thieves when you were defenseless. The thieves, the Urki, are not Robin Hoods. When they want, they steal from last-leggers. When they want, they are not squeamish about taking last food cloths off a man freezing to death. Their great slogan is, you today, me tomorrow. Here is what our laws were like for 30 years, to 1947. For robbery of the state, embezzlement of state funds, a packing case from a warehouse, for 3 potatoes from a collective farm. 10 years. After 1947, it was as much as 20. But robbery of a free person? Suppose they cleaned out an apartment, carting off a truck of everything the family had acquired in a lifetime. If it was not accompanied by murder, then the sentence was up to 1 year. sometimes 6 months. The thieves flourished because they were encouraged. Through its laws, the Stalinist power said to the thieves clearly, "Do not steal from me, steal from private persons." You see, private property is a belch from the past, but personally assigned VIP property is the hope of the future. And the thieves understood. In their intrepid stories and songs, did they go to steal where it was difficult, dangerous, where they could lose their heads? No. Greedy cowards, they pushed their way in where they were encouraged to push their way in. They stripped the clothes from solitary passers-by and stole from unguarded apartments. How many citizens who were robbed knew that the police didn't even bother to look for the criminals, didn't even set a case in motion, so as to not spoil their record of completed cases? Why should they sweat to catch a thief if he would be given only 6 months, and then be given 3 months off for good behavior? And anyway, it wasn't certain that the bandits would even be tried when caught. Finally, sentences were bound to be reduced, and of course for habitual criminals especially. Watch out there now, witness in the courtroom. They will all be back soon, and it'll be a knife in the back of anyone who gave testimony. Therefore, if you see someone crawling through a window, or slitting a pocket, or your neighbor's suitcase being ripped open, shut your eyes, walk by. You didn't see anything. That's how the thieves have trained us. The thieves and our laws. There is one more important feature of our public life which helps thieves and bandits prosper: fear of publicity. Our newspapers are filled with reports on production victories which are a big bore to everyone, but you will find no reports of trials or crime in them. After all, according to the progressive doctrine, criminal activity arises only from the presence of classes. We have no classes in our country. Therefore, there is no crime, and therefore you cannot write about it in the press. We simply cannot afford to give the American newspapers evidence that we have not fallen behind the United States in criminal activity. If there is a murder in the West, photographs of the criminal are plastered on the walls of buildings. They peer out at one from the counters of bars, the windows of streetcars, and the criminal feels himself a persecuted rat. If a brazen murder is committed here, the press is silent. There are no photographs. The murderer goes 60 miles away to another province and lives there in peace and quiet. And the Minister of Internal Affairs will not have to answer questions in Parliament as to why the criminal has not been found. After all, no one knows about the case except the inhabitants of that little town. It was the same with criminal activity as it was with malaria. It was simply announced one day that it no longer existed in our country, and from then on it became impossible to treat it or even to diagnose it. And there is always that sanctifying lofty theory for everything. It was by no means the least significant of our literary figures who determined that the thieves were our allies in the building of communism. This was set forth in textbooks on Soviet collective labor policy. There were such textbooks. They were published. In dissertations and scientific essays on camp management, and in the most practical way of all, in the regulations on which the high-ranking camp officials were trained. All this flowed from the one and only true teaching, which explained all the iridescent life of humanity in terms of the class struggle and it alone. And here is how it was worked out. Professional criminals can, in no sense, be equated with capitalist elements, i.e., engineers, students, agronomists, and nuns. For the latter are steadfastly hostile to the dictatorship of the proletariat, while the former are only politically unstable. A professional murderer is only politically unstable. The lumpen proletarian is not a property owner, and therefore cannot ally himself with the hostile class elements, but will much more willingly ally himself with the proletariat. You just wait. That is why in the official terminology of Gulag they are called socially friendly elements. Tell me who your friends are. That is why the regulations repeated over and over again. Trust the recidivist criminals. That is why through the cultural and educational section, A consistent effort was supposed to be made to explain to the thieves the unity of their class interests with those of all the workers, to indoctrinate them in a suspicious and hostile attitude toward the kulaks and counter-revolutionaries. And the authorities were to place their hopes in these attitudes. But when this elegant theory came down to earth in camps, here is what emerged from it. The most inveterate and hardened thieves were given unbridled power on the islands of the archipelago. In camp districts and in camps, power over the population of their own country, over the peasants, the petty bourgeoisie, and the intelligentsia, power they had never before had in history, never in any state in all the world, power which they couldn't even dream about out in freedom. And now they were given all other people as slaves. What bandit would ever decline such power? The central thieves, the top-level thieves, totally controlled the camp districts. They lived in individual cabins, or tents, with their own temporary wives, or arbitrarily picking over the smooth broads from among their subjects. They had the intellectual women 58s and the girl students to vary their menu. In Norillag, Chavdarov heard a Mall offer for her thief husband. "Would you like me to treat you to a 16-year-old collective farm girl?" This was a peasant girl who had been sent to the north for 10 years because of 1 kilo of grain. The girl tried to resist, but the Mall soon broke her will. "I'll cut you up. Do you think I'm any worse than you? I lie under him." People will object that it was only the bitches who accepted positions, while the honest thieves held to the thieves' law. But no matter how much I saw of one and the other, I never could see that one rabble was nobler than the other. The thieves knocked gold teeth out of Estonians' mouths with a poker. The thieves, in Krasleg in 1941, drowned Lithuanians in the toilet for refusing to turn over a food parcel to them. The thieves used to plunder prisoners sentenced to death. Thieves would jokingly kill the first cellmate who came their way just to get a new interrogation and trial, and spend the winter in a warm place, or to get out of a hard camp in which they had fallen. So why mention such petty details as stripping the clothes or shoes from someone out in sub-zero temperatures? And why mention stolen rations? No, you'll not get fruit from a stone, nor good from a thief. The theoreticians of Gulag were indignant. The kulaks, in camp, didn't even regard the thieves as real people, thereby, so to speak, betraying their true Bastille colors. But how can you regard them as people if they tear your heart out of your body and suck on it? All their romantic bravado is the bravado of vampires. End of Part 3, Chapter 16.